How far would you go to get justice for someone you love? Would you put your freedom on the line? Or put your own mental health through the ringer in search of answers? How far can love and the heartbreak of death take us in search for concrete answers on a life-changing tragedy? Welcome to Strange and Unexplained with me, Daisy Egan. I know I've talked about this before on the show, but sometimes I am struck by how lucky I am that nothing really awful has happened to me. And by really awful, I guess I mean murder, because certainly other awful things have happened to me. I have spent many hours blaming myself for putting myself in dangerous situations, but really, when it comes down to it, there was nothing particularly dangerous about the situations in which I put myself. One should be able to go to a club or hang out with a friend in a dorm room, or even drink in public while underage, and expect to get through the night generally unmolested, literally and figuratively. One should even, I dare say, be able to walk down a dark alley in a dicey neighborhood and expect to arrive at one's destination without incident. But, of course, some of us are in danger simply because we exist in a world where terrible things have been allowed to happen for centuries with little to no recourse. Or we exist in a world where the prevailing message is that we do not deserve to move through the world safely. For some of us, our very existence is an invitation to violence, and whether we're at a club, in a dark alley, or just trying to get to work in the middle of the day, our safety is never guaranteed. 15-year-old Nicole Van Den Hurk was just trying to get to work. It was October 6th, 1995, in Eindhoven, a city in the Netherlands about 2 hours south of Amsterdam and 2.5 hours northeast of Brussels. Nicole left home in the morning to get to her job at the Woensel shopping center. When she failed to show up, her coworkers alerted her family, I assume, who called the police. I should note here that most of my sources for this episode were originally written in Dutch, and I used Google Translate, so there may be small pieces here and there that aren't tremendously clear. At any rate, by 6 p.m. that evening, a police search party of about 15 people found Nicole's bike in the Dommel River near the water treatment plant. Divers were sent into the river, but nothing was found. 3 days later, on October 9th, riot police had joined the search for Nicole. Apparently, the day that Nicole went missing, according to a piece on the Dutch news site Eindhoven Dagblad, police had arrested 5 young people who'd been involved in what sounds to me like the Dutch version of wilding. Quote, the group of young people wreaked havoc among cyclists and pedestrians using the street where Nicole was last seen. Some of the children in the group know Nicole from her school, Penta College in Eindhoven, end quote. No one from the group knew what had happened to Nicole. By October 12th, police were searching the sewers, and several psychics had called in with tips. I couldn't find any details on the so-called tips the so-called psychics called in with, but it hardly matters. An anonymous letter to the police claimed that a car was seen near the water treatment plant on the morning of the disappearance. The author provided the license plate number, but this tip didn't seem to lead anywhere useful. Nicole's family had all been interviewed, including her grandmother and uncle in Germany, with whom it seems Nicole didn't have contact. Everyone was fairly sure by that point that Nicole had not run away, but that something had happened to her. One would imagine, for starters, that a person running away wouldn't abandon their bike in a river voluntarily. On the 19th, just over a week after authorities found her bike, Nicole's backpack was found along the canal. Police brought in a German shepherd named Lex, who was trained to find human remains in the water. About a week and a half after that, 10 more dogs were employed in the search for Nicole. By November 7th, without any more traces of Nicole found, police began to waffle on their conviction that Nicole had not run away. Apparently, they thought it was more likely a 15-year-old vanished without a trace voluntarily than that something nefarious had happened to her. On November 10th, police announced that they thought Nicole was in Germany based on a tip they'd received back on October 24th. Apparently, someone thought they had seen her at a gas station about an hour away in Germany all the way back on October 6th, the day Nicole went missing. And then, on the 16th, the remains of a young woman were found in Belgium, but they were determined to not belong to Nicole. I can't imagine what this kind of news feels like to receive as the loved one of someone who's been missing for over a month. On the one hand, it's probably a relief to have any amount of information, especially the information that a dead body found wasn't that of your loved one. Then again, I suppose that would also stoke anxiety further, causing one to ask, well, if that's not them, then where the hell are they? At any rate, 5 days later, the mystery of where Nicole was put to rest when her body was found hidden under conifer branches between the towns of Lierop and Mierlo, about a half-hour east of where she'd gone missing. Nicole's autopsy found that she had multiple injuries to her head and hands. Her jaw had been fractured twice, and she had been stabbed in the chest multiple times with what the report stated was likely a pocket/fishing knife. Nicole's family finally had the awful answer about how she died, but the questions remained. What happened to Nicole Van Den Hurk, and who was responsible? Strangers, I'm so excited to tell you about our sponsor, Avocado Green Mattress. Their certified organic mattresses sleep cool, relieve pressure, and support your body so you can enjoy deep, restorative sleep. They don't use polyurethane foams. Instead, every mattress uses healthy, natural materials. They're even handmade. What really got me was being able to go in and feel it for myself. You can actually walk into an Avocado showroom or find their mattresses at a retailer near you, and once you lie down on one, you just know. Avocado focuses on real materials and thoughtful craftsmanship. Their mattresses, like Avocado's best-selling green mattress, are supportive, comfortable, and feel intentionally made, not mass-produced. So it's not only a wise long-term investment, it also feels amazing and looks stylish. Choosing an organic mattress or solid wood bed frame like Avocado's City bed frame brings timeless design, quality, and sustainability into my bedroom. Avocado mattresses are designed to provide both comfort and proper support, helping your body stay aligned while still feeling cozy. And now you can feel exactly that at a location near you. Choosing Avocado is one of the most sustainable choices you can make. Made with natural, certified organic materials that are responsibly sourced and built to last, which means less waste over time. Avocado products are made, not manufactured, and thoughtfully crafted with real materials to deliver lasting comfort and support. You can experience them in person at an Avocado showroom or a premier retailer near you. Or shop online at avocadogreenmattress.com/strange to check out their mattress and furniture sale. That's avocadogreenmattress.com/strange. avocadogreenmattress.com/strange. A little less than 3 months after Nicole's body was found about a half hour from her home, more than 4,600 miles and an ocean away in Miami, Florida, another girl from Nicole's hometown of Eindhoven was arrested on drug charges. Once in police custody, she told police she knew who killed Nicole. The murderers forced her into drug smuggling, she said. Nicole's father, Ep1 Van Den Hurk, said he knew the girl and believed her story. To clarify, Ep1 was actually Nicole's adopted father. Nicole's mother, Angelica Techtmeyer, had been single when she gave birth to Nicole on July 4th, 1980, in Erkenlinz, Germany. Shortly after Nicole was born, Angelica met Ep1, a Norwegian living in Germany. The couple and baby moved back to the Netherlands together, and they married sometime in 1982, when Ep1 also officially adopted Nicole. Ep1 and Angelica had a son, Tommy, Nicole's only biological sibling, after which, in 1989, the couple divorced. For whatever reason, Ep1 was granted custody of Nicole. There's not much information out there about Angelica, but it sounds like she definitely had her own demons. Something has to be pretty drastic, I would imagine, for a court to award custody not only to the father, but to the adopted father. Indeed, in April of 1995, Angelica died by suicide. Eventually, Odd married a woman named Yolanda van der Weyden, and the couple raised Nicole, Tommy, and Yolanda's daughter, Debbie. There may have been other step-siblings, but their names never came up in the research. This Norwegian Brady Bunch also included Andy, Odd's son from his first marriage before Angelica. Andy, who was about 21 at the time of Nicole's death, did not live with the rest of the family. Following his parents' divorce in 1978, he lived primarily with his mother and visited his father, staying with them on occasion. By the time of her death, Nicole was living with her grandmother in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. It's unclear which grandmother this was, though it was likely either Odd's or Yolanda's mother. Also unclear is why Nicole was living with her grandmother. At any rate, despite Odd's faith in the girl who'd been arrested in Miami, her information ended up leading nowhere. Odd was, by this point, not impressed with the work of the Eindhoven Police Department. He even made public statements claiming they were trying to frame him. Despite Odd's claims, however, police actually arrested his son, Andy, on May 23, 1996. According to Eindhoven Dagblad, quote, police arrested a 21-year-old man from Eindhoven yesterday morning on suspicion of involvement in the death of 15-year-old Nicole Van Den Hurk. The suspect is a son from a previous marriage of Odd Van Den Hurk, the father of the murdered girl. Police declined to comment last night, beyond stating that there is a relationship between the suspect and the Van Den Hurk family. The police are considering the possibility that more arrests will be made in this case, end quote. Police said the arrest came from information gathered during the investigation, though it's unclear what exactly that information was. The only clue given in the reporting is that Odd actually offered Andy up as a suspect during interviews. Norwegian privacy laws are pretty serious, even after, as we'll learn later, someone has been arrested and convicted. About his son's arrest, Odd said, quote, I hope he's not directly involved, but at most saw something or knows something. I know his name was mentioned early on in the rumor mill. On the one hand, I hope the case is finally solved, but if he really had something to do with Nicole's death, then I have to live with that too, end quote. Odd's wife, Yolanda, who I would have to imagine probably didn't have much of a relationship with Andy at all, said, quote, I can't imagine that boy having anything to do with it, end quote. However, according to the piece in Eindhoven Dagblad, Odd then alleged that when the Van Den Hurk family had been on vacation in Spain, Andy had, quote, sexually approached Nicole there. We know that for sure. We've kept a close eye on him since then, end quote. Once again, there is no more information about this. I don't know what kind of advance Andy is accused of making on his stepsister. It bears mentioning that they were not related by blood, though Andy was 6 years older than Nicole, and she was definitely a minor when this would have happened. Odd also said their relationship had been strained ever since Andy had moved out, and that, quote, I struggled with the fact that he kept changing friends. The relationship with our family improved when he had a steady boyfriend for a while, end quote. I have to imagine this is a sanitized version of whatever the family was going through. There must have been more to this story, because your teenage son having a rotating door of friends can't be that big a deal. Maybe the kind of company he chose to keep didn't sit well with his father? Despite his father's suspicions, however, Andy was released just 4 days after his arrest due to lack of evidence. It's worth noting here that Andy identified as gay, which it seems his father was aware of with his statement about having had a steady boyfriend. Of course, I suppose that doesn't preclude him from making a sexual advance at a woman, but it does make it seem less likely than if he'd identified differently. Perhaps the incident in which Andy allegedly made a pass at Nicole was something as simple as complimenting her bathing suit or her hair or her lip gloss. It might have been something that was completely innocuous that was misinterpreted. Who knows? And then, less than 2 weeks later, on June 8, 1996, Odd Van Den Hurk, Nicole's father, was arrested on suspicion of involvement in Nicole's murder. He, too, was released after 5 days after police found no reasonable suspicion. The police declined to state what those facts and circumstances were, quote, in order to protect Ad Van Hurk's privacy. They had searched his home the day before his arrest, and the items seized were returned to him. After a red herring tip from a Norwegian girl smuggling drugs in Miami and 2 arrests that led nowhere, the case went cold. And that's how it remained for years, until a familiar face made a most surprising confession. On March 8th, 2011, 16 years after Nicole went missing and was found apparently murdered, Nicole's stepbrother, Andy Van Den Hurk, now 36 years old, posted this on Facebook, quote, "I will be arrested today at the murder of my sister. I confessed. We'll get in contact soon," end quote. After which, he presented himself to the Eindhoven police and confessed to having murdered his stepsister. Again, there are frustratingly few details about what exactly Andy told police, but the confession was rendered moot anyway when about a month later, on April 5th, Andy was released once again because of a lack of evidence tying him to the murder of his stepsister. And regardless of his stepmother Yolanda's faith in him, Ad was angry that Andy had kicked up the dust on the case. He told a reporter with the news outlet Omroep Brabant, quote, "How can the justice system treat data so lightly and play with people's lives? Our lives have been turned upside down, just like 16 years ago. My work is ruined, and nothing sensible came of it. Of course, we are relieved that it isn't my son, but on the other hand, what is that boy thinking?" End quote. He was so angry, in fact, he told the reporter they should, quote, "lock Andy up in a psychiatric institution, and they must never let that boy go again. If you can cause this kind of suffering by sharing such a gruesome fact, and the justice system has no case, that is too terrible for words," end quote. Despite whatever suffering Andy's false confession may have caused, there was a purpose to his bizarre decision. He told a reporter in 2016, quote, "I wanted to get her exhumed and get DNA off her. I kind of set myself up, and it could have gone horribly wrong. I had to put steps in place to get her exhumed. I went to the police and said I did it. She is my sister. Absolutely. I miss her every day." End quote. And this ploy worked. Nicole was exhumed on September 9th, 2016, and her remains were further examined. Upon this re-examination, new DNA evidence was collected, specifically a sperm sample taken from the clothes Nicole had been wearing at the time of the attack. Testing of the samples provided 3 different DNA profiles. One was Nicole's boyfriend at the time of her murder, and the other 2 were unknown. One article said the samples were the boyfriend, the suspect, and a third unknown party. I don't know why they didn't consider the third to be a suspect, but they would eventually be proven right when it became clear that the third person's DNA only made it into the sample from an error in the handling of the evidence back in 1996. In other words, whoever handled the evidence unknowingly deposited their own DNA onto it. Not, I would hope, to Jesus, their own semen, but more likely just skin tissue or like spit from a sneeze or something. Anyway, a reward for information leading to an arrest was upped from 25,000 guilders to 15,000 euros, a little over $17,000 in today American-style money. Very oddly, at some point during the re-examination of Nicole's body, a portion of her jaw went missing. It's highly unlikely that this happened in the initial investigation in 1996 because Nicole's body wasn't skeletonized when they found it, so it would have been impossible for a part of her to go missing without some intention behind it. And, of course, there were no notes from the initial investigation about any missing body parts. No one knows what happened to Nicole's jaw, if someone took it or it just kind of fell off and no one noticed. Her initial autopsy did find her jaw was broken, so it is possible it fell off upon exhumation, but one would hope that the people handling that process would be careful not to lose body parts. It took investigators some time, but finally, more than 3 years after they exhumed Nicole's body, police arrested a man only known to the public as Jas de Hay. Hay being the Dutch pronunciation for the letter G, so in essence and for our purposes, I'll refer to him as Jas G throughout. Let's go on an important side quest here for information. The Netherlands is one in a collection of countries that don't name those suspected, prosecuted, or convicted of crimes. The reasoning is mostly that the perpetrator's family deserve anonymity, but also that the perpetrator themselves deserves to be able to serve their time and then live out the rest of their lives without the weight of their past on their shoulders. This is in stark contrast, for example, to the New York Times publishing the full names, addresses, and schools of the minors accused in the Central Park 5 case. So this means that in the Netherlands, even if someone is found guilty and given a prison sentence, they will remain largely anonymous to the general public. I can see the value in a policy like this, and I have mixed feelings about our own criminal justice system, but in this case, according to one source, quote, in 2000, G was guilty of the brutal rape of a 20-year-old woman, for which he had also been convicted. He dragged the victim from her bicycle and took her to a remote area. In addition, G was previously sentenced to 3 years in prison and compulsory psychiatric treatment after sexually abusing his ex-girlfriend twice in her own home. End quote. Another article stated he was linked to a rape case from 1987, although it is unclear if that refers to the sexual assault of his ex-girlfriend. So apparently, the Netherlands has a system in place for offenders they deem to have severe personality disorders, in which they are mandated for psychiatric treatment after they have served their prison sentence. A piece in the journal Psychiatry from 2007 by Judith Boer and Jan Gerrits, titled Learning from Holland, the TBS System, explains it this way, quote, since 1928, the courts in the Netherlands have had the option to impose a combination verdict on offenders with severe mental disorders, a prison sentence and a penal hospital order, the TBS, meaning at the disposal of the government. The main aims of this penal hospital order are protection of society and treatment of the offender in order to rehabilitate patients into the community. In particular, the pathways of care after treatment in a TBS hospital and the possibility of placement in a long-stay facility are highlighted. For the past 80 years, the TBS has been a pragmatic and successful way of reducing recidivism of high-risk offenders in the Netherlands. End quote. I'm certainly not an expert on this system, having just learned about it, but I would hope that the offender receives psychiatric treatment not just after their prison stay, but concurrent with their incarceration. And, of course, I have no idea what these treatment facilities look like, so I can't say whether it's just a fancy way of keeping people imprisoned under the guise of psychiatric treatment, as was the practice here in the States until the middle of the last century when attitudes began to change about involuntary stays at psychiatric institutions, or if they are actual places where actual psychiatric care is administered. Lord knows our prison system here in the States is indeed the largest mental health care provider in the country, with some 300,000 people in prisons who suffer from mental disorders, which is 3 to 4 times more than the number in mental health hospitals, according to a piece in The Economist. PrisonPolicy.org reports that, quote, over half of people in state prisons reported some indication of a mental health problem. Women and Native people in prison are suffering from mental illness at even higher rates. As law enforcement and courts respond to mental illness like it's a crime, prisons and jails fill up with people who have serious mental health needs, which these systems are not designed to accommodate. End quote. I'm not going to start pulling at that thread because A, I'm not qualified, and B, it's too depressing. The point is, who knows what kind of psychiatric care offenders in the Netherlands get in the state-mandated psychiatric care portion of their sentence, or how rigorous that care is. Apparently, Jas G himself wasn't even finished with his mandated psychiatric care, if the Eindhoven's Dagblad piece is correct. So it would seem that at least sometimes the mandated care is provided in an outpatient model. Given this, it's especially confusing why G wasn't arrested much earlier. He was already in the system when Nicole was attacked and murdered. Indeed, they had identified him through the DNA testing in 2012, and yet he was arrested more than a year later. According to another Dutch news site, the night before Nicole Van Den Hurk's murder, G had an argument with his ex-girlfriend and was aggressive toward her. The police had to intervene, and G left for an unknown destination. And, of course, that doesn't automatically mean he's guilty for an unrelated crime, but considering his past record and the fact that he was supposed to have received state-mandated care, it seems to me that someone might have been like, hey, maybe we should look at him for this awful crime? What do I know? While awaiting trial, the state built their case by conducting an undercover operation during which a witness told an undercover officer that G had confessed that he murdered a girl, quote, because she had ridiculed him. For some reason, however, this statement wasn't allowed at trial. It may have something to do with G's lawyer, Job Nuster, claiming Nicole's family had gone around paying people to act as witnesses to incriminate G. However, there is no evidence of this. G, who was nearly 50 years old at this point, was initially charged with premeditated murder and rape, but the murder charge was lowered to manslaughter, I guess because G's lawyer was good enough to convince whoever's in charge of charges that the murder was not, in fact, premeditated. More on that in a bit. Needless to say, Nicole's family was upset at this decision. Her stepbrother Andy said he would like to see the justice system revised so that, quote, convicted people who rape can't just walk free again. And her father, Odd, said, quote, this man deserves the highest punishment there is. He has already attempted to murder 2 women in the past and has taken the life of my child. The Netherlands is not helped by this, that such a man may still walk the streets, end quote. But of course, G had not been convicted of anything yet. One of G's biggest claims for his innocence was that Nicole was sexually active and therefore, quote, it would not be provable that Nicole was raped. Also, he pointed out that Nicole was pregnant when she was raped and murdered, because we all know pregnant people can't be raped. G's lawyer, Nuster, argued that Nicole's pregnancy introduced the possibility that someone else might have had cause to murder her. Listen, I'm not even going to try to make sense of that. But the Public Prosecution Service, the Dutch version of the prosecution, said her pregnancy was so early it's unlikely even she would have known she was pregnant. And let me tell you, as someone who didn't know they were pregnant for 10.5 weeks, this is incredibly plausible. Of course, it makes no fucking difference if she was pregnant or not. Nevertheless, Nuster leaned on the pregnancy to suggest, I guess, that Nicole was promiscuous. I don't know if you know this, but you can only get pregnant if you're promiscuous. That's a science fact. G denied having encountered Nicole at all, but said if his DNA matched the sample found on Nicole's body, it would be because they must have had consensual sex shortly before she was murdered, which he also denied having any memory of. Of course, he would have been in his late 20s and she was 15, so even if she had somehow encountered this adult male stranger and said yes to having sex with him, it still wouldn't have been consensual. And while you and I might scoff at this I don't remember argument, Nuster told reporters that Nicole and his client allegedly went to the same bars, and the girl allegedly led a promiscuous lifestyle. His client had a, quote, rough life, and, quote, it was chaos. He had sex with many women. It shouldn't be strange that you don't know who you've had sex with after all this time, end quote. Prosecutor Erna Vrijhoeven also scoffed, pointing out that it's one thing to not remember having slept with a particular person 16 years later, but when that person showed up on the front page of all the papers as the victim of a rape and murder shortly after your sexual encounter, you're going to remember that. I would add that if I had had consensual sex with someone who then turned up dead and I wasn't responsible for their death, I would probably go to authorities and be like, look, I had sex with them yesterday, so you will probably find my DNA on them, but I swear to God, I didn't murder them. Of course, G doesn't sound like he was the brightest cookie in the tool shed, so even if we are to believe that they had sex and then someone else killed her, he probably didn't know there would be any evidence of their sexual encounter to point to him anyway. Nuster also tried to argue that the third unknown DNA sample was at least reasonable cause for doubt, or whatever the Dutch version of that is. And actually, technically, I think if I were a juror, I would have to agree. If there is a third unidentified person's DNA, there is at least reason to doubt that the suspect did it. Even if, as the prosecutor pointed out, standards for handling DNA in 1995 weren't as rigorous as they are today, and it's possible that a swab used to collect DNA samples from Nicole's body was left out on the table long enough for someone else's DNA to get on it. What I don't understand is why they didn't go back to everyone who might have handled Nicole's body during the initial investigation and gotten their DNA to compare. At any rate, a lab in Auckland, New Zealand was brought in to do highly sophisticated testing on the sample and concluded that, quote, a number with 14 zeros is needed to clarify the probability that someone other than the suspect is in the semen trace, end quote. And so, Jas G was convicted of the rape of 15-year-old Nicole Van Den Hurk. But are you ready for this? Not of her murder. Make sense? No? You're right. But let's try to parse out whatever logic the judge used. So basically, the judge decided that G raped Nicole and then someone else came along and murdered her. It was all due to that third unknown DNA sample, and again, I have to say I could totally see this leading to the same result here in the States. Even though it is actually ludicrous. In order for a person to be found guilty, they need to be guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt, and unfortunately, that third unidentified DNA provides a shadow of a doubt. G was sentenced to 5 years in prison, 2 of which the court decided he'd already served while awaiting trial, and given that he was, quote, well-behaved in prison, there was a possibility that his sentence could be cut shorter. According to the NL Times, quote, after the court announced the verdict, Jolanda van der Weyden cynically applauded the judges and shouted, "You should be proud of yourselves. Go look at your own children tonight." End quote. Both sides appealed the verdict, and on October 9th, 2018, the Court of Appeals overturned the lower court's ruling on manslaughter, stating, quote, the court, unlike the district court, sees no indications of a possible unknown perpetrator, and found Jas G guilty of manslaughter. He was then sentenced to 12 years in prison. The ruling stated, in part, quote, the court takes great offense at G for killing a 15-year-old with her whole life ahead of her. G violently killed the teenager and then hid her body to avoid detection. He will not be sentenced to compulsory psychiatric treatment because he was previously ordered to undergo this measure and has not yet completed it. It is also no longer possible to determine whether the problems G was struggling with, including a personality disorder, influenced the events of 1995, end quote. However, and very confusingly, the judge did not sentence G to the maximum of 14 years because, according to Eindhoven Dagblad, quote, the judge found it proven that Jas G had a mental disorder in 1995, which means he can't fully be held accountable for the rape, end quote. Something may have gotten lost in translation, but I think it's safe to say that this man required some psychiatric help, regardless of whether or not a personality disorder influenced his actions in 95. But when traumatic events of this magnitude occur, their psychological effects ripple beyond just the victim and perpetrator. Nicole's family was, of course, devastated by her passing, followed by years of confusion on the matter and the eventual trial. Nicole's half-brother Tommy, in his victim impact statement, said Nicole's brutal death made him contemplate suicide. He said, quote, "My childhood was ruined. Instead of playing carefree, I was seeing a psychologist," end quote. The initial tragedy was bad enough, but then the family had to endure years and years of not knowing, and then a trial that dragged Nicole's name through the mud. Job Nuster's main argument, you'll remember, was that Nicole was promiscuous and pregnant, which obviously doesn't mean anything, even if it had been true. Ep1 Van Den Hurk told the press that Jas G, quote, "knows exactly how many times he kicked his ex-wife, but he doesn't remember anything about October 6, 1995. My daughter wasn't a slut. She was a 15-year-old girl who looked quite mature. Her sweet nature has been taken from us," end quote. Nicole's stepmother, Yolanda, said she wanted to scold G. Quote, "But I don't know how," she sobs, recalling how all her hopes vanished when she heard Nicole had been raped, that she must have suffered and fought. Nicole was a 15-year-old girl with so many plans. After 23 years without her, I've had to listen to how awful she was for 4.5 years. I still wonder what possessed the suspect. The suspect wouldn't tolerate any contradiction. Is that what Nicole did? Did she stand up to him? End quote. And then, as if to rub salt in their wounds, G released a statement in which he claimed that in addition to not remembering where he was on the day Nicole disappeared, he explained that he had led a rough life at the time. He had problems with alcohol, gambling, and, quote, frequent sexual encounters. He wrote, quote, "I had very little control over my life at the time," end quote, and said his life was chaotic because of low self-esteem and problems in his childhood. And instead of stopping with that limp excuse, G continued by criticizing Nicole's father, Ep1, for accusing him of having previously touched children. He said, quote, "I'm not attracted to children. If I've had sex with someone who was 15, there was no reason for me to think she was that young," end quote. Nicole's stepbrother, Andy, without whom Nicole's murder may never have been solved, isn't mentioned much in the press around the trials. It really seems like he'd had a falling out with his family despite the crucial role he played in getting justice for Nicole. It could just be that he kept quiet in the press. What we do know is that tragically, Andy was found dead in his apartment on September 2nd of 2022. Authorities were alerted when neighbors said they hadn't seen him in a few days. When they went into his apartment, they found Andy dead, surrounded by prescription pill packets and empty beer bottles. The coroner said there wasn't enough evidence to rule his death a suicide. It could have been an accidental overdose, but it seems the official cause of death was a heart attack, which is, of course, how many people struggling with alcohol and drugs end up dying. An article about his death in the Ipswich Star noted that Andy had had, quote, "a long history of mental health problems since the age of 13, including depression, anxiety, and substance abuse, while he also suffered from chronic pain prior to his death," end quote. I can only imagine the loss of his sister, the finger-pointing, and the turmoil of the trial only added to Andy's struggles. He was so brave and valiant in his effort to get justice for his sister. He put his own safety at risk just to get some answers. There was no way for him to know how his gamble would play out, and yet he took the gamble and won, as much as anyone can win in a scenario in which, really, there are no winners at all. When someone is removed from this earth in such a violent and awful way, the pain spreads far and wide. I challenge you to consider this from a few angles. Whether you're directly involved, a loved one of someone who is, or you're simply a witness to a story like this unfolding, you may conjure up a slew of existential questions in the face of death. How can one person's struggles transform into another's demise? Where does the line of guilt begin and end among everyone in the life of the deceased? And of course, the unfortunately age-old quandary, what could I have done to prevent this? Such things aren't always productive to ponder on because death is bigger than all of us. But fuck it. We're human, so we'll always find a way of asking ourselves about death anyway. And this endless wondering, combined with trauma, can have a real impact on a person's sense of self and view of the world. I can only hope Nicole's loved ones have experienced support among themselves and others in considering these questions. Because even though death will come for each of us alone, grief is a rare opportunity for facing death together. As I've certainly emphasized before and will do again, hold your loved ones close and hold them even closer in grief. Next time on Strange and Unexplained, Dorothy Kilgallen was one of the most well-known personalities on TV and in print, lending her opinions to everything from who was who on Broadway to who might have really been responsible for JFK's assassination. That's what made her sudden, untimely death at the height of her fame even more mysterious. What actually happened to Dorothy Kilgallen? Strange and Unexplained is a production of Three Goose Entertainment and Grab Bag Collab. Special thanks to the generous patronage of our very first supporter at our Grab Bag Collab executive producer level, Jessica Hill. This episode was written by me, Daisy Egan, with research by Joe Gordette, editorial help from Becca DiGregorio, and audio engineering by Jeff Devine. If you'd like to support the show, please consider becoming a member of Grab Bag Collab. We have built an incredible community of listeners who support a small, profit-sharing, woman and non-binary owned business. At Grab Bag, we're committed to giving a platform to voices who might otherwise get overlooked by bigger networks. Plus, all our contributors get to keep ownership of their content. It's a whole new approach to podcasting. Come check it out at grabbagcollab.com. For just $4 a month or $40 a year, you can get Strange and Unexplained early and ad-free. And for just $8 or $80 a year, you'll get all the shows Grab Bag has to offer, including my other shows, Dear Daisy and Shut the F Up, Nick Lachey, as well as Amber Hunt's Crimes of the Centuries, The Catalyst, Tales of the Resistance, What If They're Wrong, and all of our quarterly shows. You can even sign up to join our live recordings. We have book clubs, live hangs, watch parties, and more. If you're feeling extra generous, you can sign up at the $50 level for even more perks, including all our shows and extras, and have your name read in the credits of our shows. Head to grabbagcollab.com today to join. To suggest an episode for Strange and Unexplained, you can email me directly at contact@strangeandunexplainedpod.com or go to strangeandunexplainedpod.com and fill out the contact form. You can follow me on Instagram at SNUpod or Daisy Egan, and join the Facebook page to be a part of the conversation. Thanks so much for listening, and stay strange.